The graveyard wasn't just cold, it was hostile. The wind in Colorado in late December doesn't just blow, it bites. It tears through wool coats and scarves, seeking out warm skin to punish. But I barely felt it. I stood by the open grave, watching the mahogany casket, my father's casket, being lowered into the frozen earth. The sound of the winch cranking was rhythmic, mechanical, and horrifyingly final. Click. Clack. Click. Clack. I looked around at the mourners. Most of them were strangers to me. Business associates from Dad's trucking company. Local politicians he had donated to. People who were checking their watches, eager to get back to their heated cars and their warm lives. And then there was her. Linda. My stepmother stood at the head of the grave, positioned perfectly for the photographer she had hired. Yes, hired. Who hires a photographer for a funeral? Linda did. She was wearing a black fur coat that probably cost more than my college tuition, crying into a lace handkerchief that remained suspiciously dry. Her son, my stepbrother Kyle, stood next to her, looking bored, scrolling on his phone, hiding the screen with his sleeve. I stood 10 feet away, isolated. Not because I wanted to be, but because Linda had orchestrated the seating arrangements that way. Family in the front row, she had told the funeral director. Apparently, being John Miller's biological son didn't qualify me as family in Linda's world. Being the son of his first, practice wife, as she called my late mother, made me an accessory. An inconvenience to be managed. The priest said the final words. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Linda threw a single red rose onto the casket. It looked dramatic. It looked perfect. It looked fake. As the crowd began to disperse, heading toward the fleet of black SUVs, I stayed behind. I wanted one moment. Just one real moment to say goodbye to the man who taught me how to fish, how to fix a carburetor, how to be a man, before Linda turned him into a stranger. I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the snow. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, rusty fishing lure. It was a daredevil spoon, red with a white stripe. The first lure Dad ever gave me. I tossed it gently into the hole. Catch a big one, Dad, I whispered, my voice cracking. Touching, a voice drawled behind me. Truly pathetic, but touching. I froze. I didn't need to turn around to know that tone. It was the voice of a woman who tasted poison and called it wine. I turned slowly. Linda was standing there, the grieving widow act completely dropped. Her eyes were hard, calculating, scanning me like I was a piece of furniture she wanted to throw out. Kyle was beside her, finally looking up from his phone, a smirk plastered on his face. Hello, Linda, I said, keeping my hands in my pockets to hide the shaking. It was a nice service. It was expensive, she corrected, examining a manicured nail. But John insisted on the best. Even in death, he had to be the biggest man in the room. She looked at me, up and down, sneering at my worn jacket and my muddy boots. Look at you, Liam. You look like a farmhand. You couldn't even rent a suit? I'm a geologist, Linda. I work in the field. This is my good jacket, I replied tiredly. I didn't have the energy for this. I'm going to head up to the house. I need to get my things. I'm driving back to Denver tomorrow. Linda laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound, like glass breaking. She looked at Kyle, and they shared a private joke. The house? Linda asked, tilting her head. Oh, honey. You don't seem to understand the timeline here. Timeline? The funeral is over, Liam, she said, stepping closer, her perfume, something heavy and floral, overpowering the scent of pine and snow. The show is done. The guests are gone. And so is your welcome. What are you talking about? My room is there. My clothes. Dad's old journals. It's not your room, Kyle piped up, his voice cracking slightly. It's the guest room. And I'm turning it into a gaming studio starting, well, now. Be quiet, Kyle, Linda snapped, though she didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on me. Liam, let me make this very simple for your rustic little brain. You are not going to the house. You are not collecting Dad's old journals. You are getting in your beat-up truck, and you are leaving. Now. Linda, it's 10 degrees below zero, I said, stunned. The roads are iced over. You can't kick me out on the day of the funeral. Dad wouldn't. Dad is dead, she screamed. The mask fell completely. Her face twisted into a snarl. John is dead, and he left everything to me. Everything. The house, the accounts, the life insurance, the trucking fleet. I saw the will. I am the sole beneficiary. You get nothing. You are nothing. She reached into her expensive handbag and pulled out a white envelope. She threw it at me. It landed in the snow. That's a trespass notice, she said calmly, adjusting her fur. My lawyer drafted it this morning. If you set foot on the property, specifically the Miller Ranch estate, I will have the sheriff arrest you. And since Sheriff Grady is my cousin, I don't think you'll enjoy the holding cell. I looked at the envelope in the snow. I looked at the grave. I looked at the woman who had made my father's last 5 years a misery of isolation and manipulation. You're evicting me? I whispered. From the home my grandfather built? I'm engaging in property management, she smiled. Now, shoo. Go find a motel. Or sleep in your truck. I really don't care. Just get off my land. She turned and walked away, Kyle trailing behind her like a loyal dog. Can we order pizza tonight, Mom? I heard him ask. I'm starving. Yes, baby. We'll order whatever you want. We're rich. I stood alone in the graveyard for a long time. The cold seeped into my bones. I was homeless. Disinherited. Orphaned. But as I bent down to pick up the trespass notice, something occurred to me. A memory. A very specific, technical conversation I had with my father 3 years ago, before the dementia started, before Linda took control of his medication. I opened the envelope. I read the legal description of the property she was banning me from. Lot 4A Miller Ranch Estate, comprising the residential structure and the immediate 5 acres of garden. I smiled. A cold, dangerous smile that matched the winter wind. Linda was a city girl. She understood jewelry. She understood credit cards. She understood appearances. But she didn't understand land. And she definitely didn't understand mineral rights. I walked to my truck, an old Ford F-150 that looked like junk but ran like a beast. I sat inside, blasting the heater, and pulled out my laptop. I opened the GIS mapping software I use for my job. I pulled up the county records. Linda thought she had won the war because she captured the castle. She didn't realize the castle was built on an island, and I owned the bridge. I drove to a Motel 6 on the outskirts of town. The room smelled of cigarettes and desperation, but it had Wi-Fi. I needed to verify everything before I made my move. I sat on the lumpy bed, staring at the screen, and let my mind drift back to how this happened. My father, John Miller, was a good man, but a lonely one. After Mom died, he threw himself into work. Enter Linda. She was a waitress at the diner Dad frequented. She was 20 years younger. She listened to his stories. She laughed at his jokes. Within 6 months, they were married. I tried to warn him. Dad, she's asking about the will on the second date, I had said. She's just practical, Liam, he had defended her. Practical? I scoffed. Dad, she Googled the price of your watch while you were in the bathroom. I saw the browser history. He got angry. He pushed me away. And Linda widened the gap. Slowly, methodically, she isolated him. First, I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. Then, Christmas became just for the couple. Then, when Dad got sick, she changed the phone numbers. She fired his longtime nurse. By the time I saw him in the hospital last week, he couldn't speak. He just squeezed my hand. I saw the fear in his eyes. He knew. He knew he had made a mistake, but it was too late. Or was it? I looked at the digital map on my screen. The Miller Ranch was huge, 500 acres of prime Colorado grazing land. But the house, the mansion Linda loved so much, sat on a specific parcel. Dad had been a shrewd businessman, Years ago, when I graduated with my degree in geology and land management, he gave me a gift. A strange gift. I'm selling the ranch to the corporation for tax purposes, he had told me over a beer. But I want you to have something that's just yours. In case the trucking business goes belly up. He had deeded me a parcel. Not the house. Not the barns. He deeded me the access strip and aquifer rights. At the time, it seemed useless. It was a 50-foot wide strip of dirt that ran from the county road to the main gate of the ranch. And underneath? The rights to the massive underground water reservoir that fed the house as well. I pulled up the deed history on the county website. Owner of record, Liam Miller. Date, August 12, 2015. Status, active. I checked the transfer documents for the ranch that Dad signed over to Linda last year. It transferred the residential parcel and grazing lands. It did not transfer the access road. And crucially, it did not include a utility easement for the water. Linda had kicked me out of the house. But to get to that house, she had to drive on my road. And to shower in that house, she had to pump my water. I leaned back on the motel pillows. She wanted to play hardball? She wanted to leave me in the cold? Fine. I checked the weather forecast. A blizzard was coming in 48 hours. 3 feet of snow. Temperatures dropping to -20. If I blocked the road, the plows couldn't get in. If I shut off the well valve, the pipes would freeze. The heating system, which relied on a boiler, would fail. The mansion would become a multi-million-dollar icebox. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Linda. I called the utility company. Hi, I said, putting on my best concerned homeowner voice. This is Liam Miller, owner of parcel ID 405B. I'm planning some emergency maintenance on the roadway. I need to install a gate. And I need to inspect the main water valve. I might need to shut it off for a few days to prevent contamination. Of course, Mr. Miller, the clerk said. Safety first. I hung up. I grabbed my keys. I wasn't going back to Denver. I was going to the hardware store. I needed a padlock, a heavy chain, and a no trespassing sign of my own. The blizzard arrived exactly when the weatherman said it would. At 4 p.m., the sky turned a bruised purple, and the first flakes began to fall, heavy, wet, and relentless. By 5 p.m., the world was a white void. I parked my truck at the very edge of my property line, where the county asphalt met the gravel of the private access road. My access road. The wind was howling now, a banshee scream that shook the frame of the F-150. I stepped out into the storm, dressed in my heavy Carhartt gear, carrying a toolbox and a heavy length of industrial-grade logging chain. The entrance to the Miller Ranch was marked by 2 stone pillars. I wrapped the chain around the stone pillars. The steel links clinked together, a sound swallowed instantly by the wind. I pulled it tight, waist-high across the road. I secured it with a master lock magnum. Then, I zip-tied a laminated sign to the center of the chain. Private property. No trespassing. Access revoked by owner. But the gate was just the warning. The real weapon was buried 10 yards away. I grabbed my shovel and walked to the utility box near the ditch. I pried it open. Inside was the main isolation valve for the ranch's water supply. This was the choke point. I reached down. The iron wheel was cold enough to burn my glove. I gripped it and turned. Righty-tighty. The valve groaned, rusted and stubborn. It gave. I spun it until it locked shut. The vibration in the pipe stopped. The flow of thousands of gallons of water, destined for Linda's 6 bathrooms and her hydronic heated floors, ceased instantly. I stood up, breathing hard. I covered the hole. I looked up the long, winding driveway toward the mansion on the hill. I could see the lights glowing warmly in the windows. I could imagine Linda sitting by the gas fireplace, sipping wine. She didn't know it yet, but the countdown had started. Most people don't understand how luxury mountain homes work. They rely on hydronic heating. Hot water pumped through tubes in the floor. Without water coming in to replenish the boiler loop, the system's safety sensors would trip. In about 2 hours, the floors would stop radiating heat. In 8 hours, with a blizzard raging outside at -20 degrees, the Miller estate would become uninhabitable. I climbed back into my truck, reclined the seat, and poured coffee from my thermos. I was going to watch. It took 3 hours for the first sign of panic. It was pitch black now. Up on the hill, I saw the headlights of an SUV flare to life. Linda was trying to leave. I watched as the black Range Rover navigated the snowy driveway. It approached the gate. The headlights illuminated the heavy steel chain and the bright orange sign. The SUV screeched to a halt. Linda leaned on the horn. A long, angry blast that echoed in the valley. The driver's door opened. Linda stepped out. She wasn't wearing her fur coat this time. She was wrapped in a cashmere shawl that whipped violently in the wind. She stomped through the snow, her expensive boots sinking deep. She banged on my window. "Liam!" She screamed over the wind. "Liam, open this gate! Are you insane? You can't block the driveway." I rolled the window down 2 inches. "Evening, Linda. Can't help you. It's private property." "It's my property!" she shrieked. "You are trespassing. Open this chain right now, or I swear to God I will call Sheriff Grady." "Read the sign, Linda. It says access revoked. That means you." "I have the water company coming," she yelled. "The water is out. The boiler is making noises." "The water isn't out, Linda. The water is fine. It's just restricted to the owner of the aquifer, which is me." She ran back to her car and grabbed her phone. 20 minutes later, flashing blue and red lights cut through the storm. Sheriff Grady pulled up behind my truck. He marched over to my truck and shined his flashlight in my face. "Liam Miller. Step out of the vehicle. Cut the chain, Liam. You're blocking emergency access to a residence. That's a felony." "It's not unlawful if it's my land, Grady," I shouted. "Don't give me that." John left the house to Linda. "Now cut the chain or I'll arrest you." "Actually, Sheriff," I opened the folder, pulling out the laminated survey map. "Look at the plot line. The Miller Ranch estate starts at the gate. The road leading to it? That's Parcel B. Owner, Liam Miller. Easement status: revocable at will of grantor." Grady squinted at the document. Snowflakes landed on the paper. "Dad transferred the road to me 5 years ago," I explained. "And see this clause? Non-transferable easement. That means the right to use the road was granted to John Miller personally, not to the property. When John died, the easement died with him." Grady looked at the paper. He looked at the chain. He looked at Linda, who was hugging herself, shivering violently. "Liam," Grady said, his voice pleading. "Come on. It's 20 below zero. You can't trap a woman and a kid up there without heat." "I'm not trapping them. They can walk. They can get in your cruiser. You can drive them to a hotel." "I can't leave my Range Rover here," Linda screamed. "It'll freeze. And I can't walk that far in these boots." "Then I guess you have a problem," I said coldly. "But Sheriff, if you cut that chain, you are destroying private property on land that does not belong to the complainant. I will sue the county for damages, and I will sue you personally. I have a dashcam recording this." Grady froze. "Linda," he turned to her. "He's got paperwork. I can't cut it without a court order. It's a civil matter." "A civil matter?" Linda screeched. "He cut my water. He blocked my driveway. Arrest him." "I can't prove he cut the water," Grady muttered. "And the road, the deed looks real, Linda. You need a judge. That'll take a week." "A week?" Linda looked at the house. The windows were dark. The power had flickered. "We'll freeze to death in a week. Then get in the cruiser," Grady said. "I'll take you to the Motel 6. "The Motel 6? Linda looked at me with pure hatred. "I am not staying in a dump like that." "Make a choice, Linda," I called out. "The house is getting colder by the minute. And once the pipes freeze, they burst. That French oak flooring you love? It's going to be underwater by morning. You bastard, she hissed. You planned this. I planned to visit my father's grave, I replied. You're the one who wrote the trespass notice. I'm just following your rules. Stay off my land. She stomped her foot. Fine. Grady, take me to town. But tomorrow, Liam, I am coming back with the biggest lawyer in Denver. Bring him, I smiled. Make sure he brings snowshoes. I watched as Linda climbed into the sheriff's cruiser. They drove away. I was alone again. I climbed back into my truck. I pulled out my sleeping bag. I was going to stay right here. Because in the morning, the real show would begin. The night was long. The wind rocked my truck, but I slept better than I had in years. I woke up at dawn. The storm had passed, leaving 3 feet of fresh powder. The air was deadly cold. Minus 25 degrees. I stepped out to stretch. Then I heard it. Crack. It sounded like a gunshot. Then another. Pop crack. It was the sound of copper pipes bursting. The sound of thermal expansion tearing through a $3 million home. My phone rang. ID, Linda. Liam? Her voice was frantic. The security company just called. They're getting flood alerts. Multiple zones. The basement. The kitchen. The master suite. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Linda. I'm just sitting on my road, watching the sunrise. The pipes. She screamed. They're bursting. I need to get up there. I need to shut off the main inside the house. Well, you can't drive up. The road is blocked. And no plumber is going to carry his equipment a quarter mile through 3 feet of snow. I'll pay you, she begged. Liam, please. The house is being destroyed. That's your inheritance too, isn't it? If the house is ruined, you'd get nothing. Actually, I said slowly. I checked the will again. Dad left you the house. But the land? The land reverts to me if the structure is deemed uninhabitable for more than 6 months. It's called the stewardship clause. Silence on the other end. You see, Linda, Dad was smart. He put in a fail-safe. If you let the ranch fall into disrepair, the deed voids. No, she whispered. Liam, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have kicked you out. Please. Open the gate. Turn the water back on. We can fix this. It's too late, Linda. The pipes have already burst. Turning the water on now would just flood it faster. And turning it off, well, the damage is done. What do you want? She screamed. Just tell me what you want. I want you to admit it. Admit that you never loved him. Admit that you were a gold digger who waited for him to die. She hesitated. Goodbye, Linda, I said. Wait. Liam. I'll sign it over. The house. The land. Everything. Just stop the damage. I can't deal with the insurance fraud investigation. I can't deal with the lawsuits. If I sign the deed to you right now, will you fix it? I smiled. The gambit had worked. She was terrified of the liability. She knew the insurance wouldn't pay out if they found out she had abandoned the house without heat. Meet me at the gate in 30 minutes. Bring the deed. And bring a pen. A black one. Dad always hated blue ink. 30 minutes later, the black Range Rover appeared again. It slid sideways near the gate. I walked out to the chain, carrying the bolt cutters. Linda stepped out. She looked defeated. Her makeup was smeared. Beside her was the town notary, Mr. Henderson. Here, Linda said, shoving a clipboard through the gap in the fence. Her hand was shaking. It's a quitclaim deed. I'm relinquishing all rights to the structure. In exchange, you assume all liability for the water damage. I read every word. It was ironclad. I signed. Henderson notarized it. It's yours, Linda spat. Enjoy the wreckage. The floors are ruined. You bought a dumpster fire, Liam. It's not a dumpster fire, Linda, I said, cutting the chain with a loud snap. It's a home. Something you never understood. She got back in her car without looking at me. She drove away, spinning her tires, desperate to escape. It took me 6 months to fix the house. Linda was right about one thing: it was a mess. But as I peeled back the layers of Linda's renovations, I started to find the house my father had built. And then, I found the secret. I was in the master bedroom, tearing out the gas fireplace insert Linda had installed. As I pulled the metal insert out, I saw a loose stone in the original chimney. My heart stopped. I reached in. I pulled out a heavy, green ammunition box. Dad's doomsday box. I opened the latch. It wasn't gold. It was cash. Bundles of it. And a letter. Liam, if you're reading this, it means you're tearing out that awful fireplace Linda made me put in. I know what she is. I know she's waiting for me to die. So I played the fool. I stopped depositing the profits into the joint account 5 years ago. This is the rainy day fund. Use it to fix the ranch. P.S. The diamond necklace she made me buy? It's cubic zirconia. I switched it. Let's see how much she gets for it at the pawn shop. Love, Dad? I laughed until I cried. Sitting there on the floor, I finally felt warm. I found out later what happened to Linda. A buddy of mine sent me a picture from a pawn shop in Denver. Linda was screaming at the broker. Apparently, finding out your retirement fund is worth $50 is a hard pill to swallow. She moved to Florida to live with her sister. As for me, I finished the house yesterday. I didn't put in a modern heating system. I restored the old wood stove. I'm sitting on the porch now. The sun is setting over the mountains. My neighbor drove by earlier and asked if I was selling the place now that it's fixed up. He said it's worth $3 million. I looked at the land. I looked at the water valve that saved my legacy. No, I told him. It's not for sale. The water runs deep here. And so do I. Karma is a funny thing. Sometimes it's just a matter of turning a valve and letting the cold do the rest.